So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So, again, my name is Lieutenant Colonel Forrest Kim. So, right now, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and transition to really giving you a little bit of an overview of the Army-Baylor program. Talk through really my responsibilities this morning and this portion of the day is really to talk through the program, give you some background. Some of you have actually seen some of this content before, so I kind of apologize in advance, but we have a lot of new faces in the room. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to just to get to know our program a little better. Those of you that are going to be staying for the oral boards tomorrow will, in that one experience of our oral boards, learn drastically more than what I could ever share with you, because at the end of the day, our students are our credentials. And you'll see really a lot of the content that they've been learning and working on throughout this past year. So I just want to touch upon some points about our program. What I'd like to do is we're going to go at a fairly rapid clip through this, but if you have any questions that you have that you have as I'm presenting the content, please feel free to just stop me and we'll have a conversation about any of the topics. This is the agenda. What we'll be talking about in the next few minutes. We'll go over our past, a little bit about our history. We'll talk our present and really what our students are finishing at this point in time. And then we'll talk about the future, and that's really where you all and you play such a pivotal role for our students in our program. So the past of the Army-Baylor program. This is a picture that was actually taken in 1951. And this is a picture of the first graduating class when our program became an actual graduate program. Prior to 1951, our program was actually a 2-week training course trying to train healthcare administrators. And really it arose out of a need of World War II, of the bolus of veterans that were coming back needing care and needing care in an organized fashion. And so there was really a need for more hospital administrators, and so the program was birthed. Very brief history, again, 1947 when the program was started. 1951, we began our affiliation with Baylor University. So our affiliation with Baylor goes back 65 years. And for those of you who know a little bit about our program is housed on Joint Base San Antonio, Fort Sam Houston, and it's run by the individuals and the folks in the back of the room that are military faculty and some Department of the Army civilians. But our students actually, when they graduate and they get their diploma, the only thing that's on there is Baylor University. So it doesn't say Army-Baylor, it says Baylor University. So that really came from the need, because the Army does not have the ability, with a few exceptions, with the University Services Health Services Program in Washington, doesn't have the ability to confer degrees. And so we partnered with Baylor University, has been a over 65-year relationship. And our program in particular was the 11th graduate program in hospital administration in the nation. So this is not talking rank. This is talking in terms of numbers that were being stood up. We were the 11th, and so very rich history. Our program has evolved much throughout the years. We've gone through a name change. We used to be the U.S. Army Baylor program, but we had some very smart folks leading the program, and they took off the U.S. Does anyone know why you would take off the U.S.? Anyone have any ideas? Faculty, you can't answer this question because you know the answer. Anyone think of why you would drop the U.S. from U.S. Army? Any ideas? So the reason why is because if your name starts with a U and you're listed in any program, you're near the bottom of that program. But if you take off the U.S. and you start with Army, all of a sudden your name jumps to the top in any program. So it was really a strategic marketing move. The U.S. is really implied, and so we went through a name change. Our program has changed in length and credit hours and electives and residency. One example in terms of elective changes is that for the life of our MBA portion of our dual degree program, we did not have any electives. And the students that were joint MHA, MBA, their curriculum was pretty much fixed and it was lockstep. They had to walk through the exact same curriculum. And this last year we actually converted 4 courses to electives, and so now our MBA students have 12 credit hours of electives, and we think that provides more flexibility, a little bit more ability to focus on specific competency needs of our students. So we added the MBA in 2005. We've messed with the curriculum quite a bit, and we changed it significantly in 2010. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Executive Clinical Leadership track, but we've actually added a one-year MHA/MBA program, really looking at the executive market. So a lot of the programs, and really it's been pretty well established now in the marketplace for MBA programs to have an executive component. Well, they'll give some credit towards working professionals to allow them to get through the program quicker. And we've really tried to tap into that potential market within our audience that we serve, which is the military health system, the federal health system. And so this program allows senior clinicians, so folks that have been working in healthcare for 10 or more years, to actually complete their MHA or their MBA in 1 year. So what ends up happening is that residency year is, because they have that experience, that drops, and those credit hours that are in the residency year get pulled into the didactic year. Okay. This is a picture of our classroom. So if you haven't had the opportunity to come to Fort Sam Houston, this is where they spend a lot of time. And this is our main classroom. And you see, we actually have our students, most of the days they wear the uniform when they come in, but in order to try to have more of a graduate school feel, 1 day a week the students come in polos and khakis. When I actually applied for my master's degree while I was in the Army, my first choice was an Army-Baylor, so I confess it was an Army-Baylor. And my first choice was the military has a school of choice program where you can go to a civilian college for 2 years. And my main motivation was, and this is a confession, I wanted to wear shorts and flip-flops for 2 years, right? I wanted to take off the uniform for 2 years. And so we try to accommodate our students with that polo, kind of that dress-down day. Our affiliation, again, we very much value our partnership with Baylor University. Again, 65 plus years. If you've watched any of the news in the past 3 to 5 years, you know that Baylor has grown in national prominence. And as of recently, there's a good side and a bad side to that, right? And so the good side is the university has really expanded based on their performance athletically. And we know that colleges, if you do well athletically, tends to attract a lot of donors. And the university has really flourished over the last number of years. If you've driven up and down I-35, you can't miss McLean Stadium. That's the new stadium that was built up there. And so with that, I had a discussion with the dean of the grad school, and and we all know this, but he said success begets success. And so the success that the university has attracted a lot of donors, and so they've really done much on that campus. But of course, you know, when you're in the national spotlight, there could be good things and there's bad things, and so Baylor is going through some pretty significant transition right now. But again, we very much value the partnership with Baylor University. Our program is a ranked program, and it's a top-ranked program. And so the program is ranked number 7th in the nation. That was the U.S. News & World Report ranking that was given in 2015, so it's fairly recent. And there's roughly about 100 schools that U.S. News & World Report ranks, and so it's a top 10 program. We are tied with Johns Hopkins and St. Louis. I asked this question, and faculty be sick of me sharing this story because I share it with pretty much every audience. But does anyone know how they do the ranking for U.S. News & World Report for MHA programs? Anyone have any ideas of what should probably be included in that? I know you know. Did anyone know have any ideas of what you think should be included in a ranking of a graduate program? Outcomes, right? Maybe job placement, maybe like GPA and GRE scores on the front end, success of alumni. A lot of those things would make sense, right? None of those things are in that ranking, right? So this particular ranking is a pure peer assessment. They hand the ballot out to all the programs, and they ask you to rank on a Likert scale 1 to 5. What's your view of the program? And so the downside is there's not a whole lot of empirical evidence that supports this ranking, but the upside is this is the ranking of our peers. And so what I'd like to tell our students is Yeah, the number 7, it's not based on test scores and things like that, but what it is based on is our reputation in the field of healthcare administration out there. And so for a while, our program was kind of pigeonholed, and this is years and years ago, but pigeonholed as a military program, that, you guys are different. But what I'd like to say is that this ranking would tell us otherwise, that our peers truly understand the quality of education that's happening within the program. And really, you all have helped to build this ranking. The MBA is top 15. We are certainly, we fall under the accreditation status of the business school, which is a AACSB. You have Terry Manus there, who's the dean, and Gary Carini, who's the associate dean. And this is just a quick picture of the new business school. If you have the opportunity to go on main campus at any portion of time, I would encourage you to actually take a look at the business school. It's beautiful. And bless you. And I think the business school is on par with any of the top business schools in the nation. It's a brand new building. Its technology is everywhere in this building, but it's really a beautiful building. This is our mission, vision, theme, and values. And the theme that really cuts through each of those directional strategies is leadership. Right? So you notice that each of those directional strategies, the word leader or leadership can be found there. And I think that's appropriate, very appropriate for our program, in the sense that if you look at any graduate school, that the average age of that graduate student is typically lower 20s, right? So now a master's degree is the new bachelor's, right? So to get a good job, everyone knows that you've got to get a master's now instead of a bachelor's. And so what tends to be the sequencing of education is folks go for their undergrad, and they go straight into their grad program, and then they try to find a job. And so when you go out there, that's the average age. Our students, the average age is in their lower 30s, and the work experience is averages 11 years of work experience. And so what we are doing is we are getting very much individuals with work experience, with leadership experience. And interestingly enough, if you would ask the question about the types of experience and the positions that our students have had, they're very significant. Many of them have been in the deployed combat setting. They've held positions of significant responsibility in our facilities. And so they certainly keep us on our toes. But I think that's one of the thing that makes our program attractive for residency sites, because you're taking really seasoned individuals, self-starters, and by and large, and giving them projects. And for the most part, our students will run with those. These are just some of the program tracks. We have an MHA, traditional 2-year program, 66 credit hours. The joint MHA MBA is 87 credit hours. And then I talked briefly early on about the executive clinical leadership track, and looking at really the prerequisites for that track are 10 or more years of clinical experience, advanced clinical degree, and our students, rather than completing the portfolio, they complete essentially a thesis in that first year, and part of the requirements for graduation are a defense of that thesis. And then they, if they finish that, then they actually participate in oral boards, and if they finish that, then they graduate.
Question on that?
Yes?
You say you have to have an advanced clinical degree. Is there any discussion on taking folks that are non-clinical but have 10+ years of experience and allowing them to go that direction?
We've had those conversations. They haven't, that additional request has not come very much from our stakeholders. We internally have that conversation. But going back to the motivation of why we started the track is really to try to capture those clinicians. So as you're familiar with, Steve, within our system, we have a lot of clinicians that take senior positions within the MHS and don't have the education background. Part of the military health system study that came out, it was a big study that was produced a year ago or so, part of the criticism was that if you looked at the senior leaders that are running our facility, a lot of clinicians, and you compared them to senior leaders out in the civilian sector, experience-wise is equal, but the education is lacking. So that's the market that we're really trying to hit. And I think we'd be open to talking about looking at it. But the other thing that we're trying to balance is, as you know, with our program, that residency year is pretty important, right? And so it's a big deal in the work that you all do in that second year. You're applying what you've learned in that first year. So what we don't want to do is we want to kind of limit, we don't want to cannibalize those folks that would otherwise go towards a traditional 2-year track and have them come to the 1-year track. And so
I think the utility isn't so much with the green suiters. It's with our civilians and
Okay.
our organizations
Okay.
that have been there 10, 15 years, assuming higher and level positions, especially as we draw down.
Right.
The opportunity to go and get the formal education, I think, provides big benefit in the long run, and does that one-team concept.
Okay, no, that's a great point. That's something that we should consider on the civilian sector. No, that's a really good point. Yes?
The joint MHA MBA program, so when you say same structure, it's still a 2-year program?
It's still 2-year.
It's an increased workload.
That's right.
And then do you have to, is it a different acceptance process?
There are, right. So the GRE, the juries are higher. So we've got minimum standards for both the MHA and the dual degree. They're higher. And it's a more rigorous screening process for those individuals coming in because 87 credit hours, I mean, so 79 of those are conducted in the first year. That's a lot. And so they are certainly drinking from the fire hose. And there are concerns with that track. It's possible because we've been doing it now, for a number of years, so students are able to get through it. But the biggest complaint is that, if the MHA folks are drinking from a fire hose, the dual degree, very much so. And so we're having conversations as faculty and saying, how much is too much? And really looking at, are there areas where we can cut back maybe on some of those credit hours because we have some discretion based on our university, Baylor University, and our crediting body to flex on those credit hours. And so that's something that we certainly need to look at. But it is a lot. It certainly is a lot to get through. Okay. But the other thing to consider is our students are different, right? So that's the other thing to consider with our student. It's more mature individuals have a little bit better in terms of being able to adjust and balance life. But it certainly is a concern that we need to constantly to revisit. So great point. Any other questions, comments? This is our didactic year and how it breaks out. And what you will notice are the credit hours for the different tracks in parentheses at the bottom. So we are in a 5-semester, our year is organized in 5 semesters. The 5th semester is a short one. We're calling that a mini-mester, and that's really the strategic management capstone course. But you can see our students, for the most part, are taking a very heavy load throughout. Now, the one comparison that I will make, and this might help a little bit, is the service academy. So West Point, Annapolis, the Air Force Academy, on average, those individuals are taking about 18 credit hours per semester. And so that would be pretty much the equivalent, I would say, for our program, is looking at that kind of model. Okay. Competency development is, again, this is the reason why we exist, is to enhance the competency of our students. We are using, our program is built off the Joint Medical Executive Skills Competency Model. You have, I think, some of that content in your packet. You will certainly be exposed to that later this evening when we orient you to the oral boards process, because that's where the questions will be built off of. We use a version of Bloom's taxonomy, which is really just an educational concept in terms of how to communicate in the language of education. And what we're trying to get at is there are 3 areas of progress that we use within our program. We like to say that our students will progress from knowledge to application to expert. Now, one thing that you'll notice on this figure is that we don't anticipate any of our students becoming experts in any of the 35 competencies as they finish the didactic year, nor do we expect them to be experts when they finish the residency year. Expert really is reserved for those that are published on a topic, that are speaking on the topic, and so our students may come in an expert in the field, but that's the rare exception. What we're really getting at is high knowledge application, and that really is the goal for our students. And again, in that residency year, that's the focus, is to apply what they've learned, the concepts, the theories, the tools, and to apply them in that second year, the residency year. This just gives you some idea. This is a snapshot. This is not a comprehensive list, but is a snapshot of some of the residency locations throughout the country where our students go. And you know, I know that you in the room can probably pick out 5 to 10 organizations that you recognize. We are very fortunate in the Army-Baylor program to have these partnerships with premier healthcare organizations throughout the country, both locally as well as the rest of the world, the rest of the country, to include sites in Europe and in Korea as well. I like to say that our residency director has both the hardest and the easiest job. Portion of the easiest job is the sell, right? So when you go to a new site and you say, how would you like to have a seasoned healthcare leader working projects in your facility for free, right? Because the person paying the salary is the military. And so it's a pretty easy sell. By and large, our students do well, and we do have outliers. But by and large, our students do well. We've developed a strong reputation for the students working that second year. And again, sites across the country. We're very, very proud of the partnerships that we have. So our future. So this is really looking, just briefly, let me give you a snapshot. I've run out of time in my section, but just give you a snapshot of some of the things that we're working on in the program. We are looking at increased numbers of clinicians in our program. So that's one of the things I think values of our program is a lot of traditional MHA programs, they're just administrators sitting around the room in terms of classroom. Our program has physicians, nurses, dietitians, physical therapists, and all different types of administrators, which adds to I think the diversity of the classroom. We are seeing increased number of clinicians. We are really trying to raise up the research profile of our program, working hard to do that. And that third bullet is really, I think you should see a difference. For the first time in our program's history, we have gotten authorization to hire a GS civilian residency director. Colonel Kyler and others before him have done an excellent job, but it was an additional duty. So in addition to be teaching classes and having other service responsibilities and doing research, it was an additional duty. Now we have a full-time individual, and we are so thankful for Lorena and the role. She's already just exceeded our expectation in terms of what she's been doing in that role. She even volunteered. So just to give you a snapshot of this week, our students started orientation on Monday, and then that's our new class, and then our outgoing classes are having oral boards, and so there's a lot of stuff going on. She's running this Preceptor conference. She volunteered to actually organize our orientation. So she's really done a phenomenal job and again, exceeded expectations. You should see, because of that, we have someone in the full-time role and enhanced communication with each of your sites. And so as you have issues, your primary point of contact will still be the advisor, right? Because that's really that relation, the advisor, the preceptor, and the student. That triad is really the heart and soul of that year. But we've got a full-time residency director there as well that can assist. And so we're really thankful for that. And then the last thing I'll say is that this particular summer and fall, we're going through a very significant transition. We've got roughly 50% of our faculty that's turning over. So if you look at any faculty, that's a big number, right? And so we've got 13 faculty, we've got 4 military that are transitioning, and we've got a couple of civilians that are looking at retirement. So so bear with us as we go through this transition. There may be some hiccups along the way, but we're really thankful in terms of residency issues. Continue to work with your advisor and Ms. Bailey. This is our website. If you haven't taken a look at it in a while, we're really proud of our website. Captain Lynn Downs and Colonel Richter did a fabulous job setting this up. We try to keep current with news and events, and so if you haven't bookmarked that page, I encourage you to do that. And that's it. So, yes.
Years ago, I had a couple of the government civilian residents, but I haven't seen that in a while. Is that off now? Or?
It's on hold. And so our program has Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, VA, and Department of Army civilians. The Department of Army civilians, there were some issues with that was a pilot program from a number of years. We realized that the folks that were managing that program had never requested to formalize that program. And so what ended up happening was there was a formal document and a request that went up to the Department of the Army level, and that's where that request is sitting. We've had a very challenging time trying to navigate getting that document signed and back to us, and essentially that's all we're waiting for. So everyone has said that it's good to go. We've approved it, but this is one of the downsides of the large bureaucracy is getting it through the system. So we anticipate that next year we'll have civilians that are back in the program. We'd like to see, honestly, we'd like to see Department of Defense civilians to come in. We'd like to see public health. I think that's an untapped market for our program. Because again, our program is federal focused, and so we'd like to see Indian health would be great as well. So, other questions and comments?
Chairman, what's a typical class size, and do you have trouble filling?
Great question. So typically, over the past number of years, our numbers were about 50. And so, but the sitting class right now that just started on Monday, it's a class of 39. And one thing that we've experienced is that with the Army drawing down, it's had an impact on our students. And so just to be frank, we had 8 students that because they were either passed over or decided to get out of the military because they saw the writing on the wall, they were accepted, and one day they were part of the program in terms of coming, and then they dropped. And so we see that. I think our program is a reflection of the greater activities and events that are happening in our external environment, and as the Army is drawing down, we're seeing the impact of that on our program. So, great question.
And what's your total number of partnering organizations, preceptors?
That's a great question. So the bottom line, I can't speak to the exact number because it is in flex, but the bottom line is the demand for our students outweighs the number of students that we have, and that's an ongoing conversation. That's an issue that we have, and it's sensitive, right? Because there's a lot of folks that want our students, and they know how they do. We've got sites that would be great. John's site in Darnell is a perfect example. Would be great. They've just gone through a multi-million-dollar new hospital up there. But there are also other issues with placements, and so jobs, and so we've got several bosses other than, Lorena and myself that make decisions on the faculty of where the students go. We've got to answer to our military handlers, the Human Resources Center. We've got to answer to, I want to use layman terms, right? We've got consultants that we answer to because every single military officer has a consultant within their particular career field that wants to send they want their hands in the pie as well. And so it really is a balancing act. And so that's the challenge, is trying to find sites. It's really, really crazy thing. So Cleveland Clinic, which is one of our great sites, at one point this year, that was going to go unfilled. I mean, you think about a site like Cleveland, right? Well, what a great opportunity for our students. But it just didn't work out. But we ended up in the last minute, ended up diverting one of our students there. But that's really the challenge that we have. And so my focus really, and the charge I've given to Lorena, is we really need to make this student focused. And so what is in the best interest of developing that student? And so that's what we really try to keep at the heart of those decisions. So, great question. Yeah.
Do y'all have dialogue with the American College of Graduate Medical Education?
We don't. I'd say we primarily are focused and get our cues from our CAMI, our accrediting body there, and then from our affiliate university, which is Baylor. And so I participate. There are a number of folks, Lynn, Fred, others in our program that are CAMI fellows. And so what we ended up doing is a part of that program. We travel to other universities, and all you are familiar with the Joint Commission. It's like the Joint Commission process for graduate programs. And just like the Joint Commission takes volunteers and they go around as site surveyors, CAMI does that for our graduate programs, and a number of us participate as fellows to do those visits. That's really how we keep in touch with what's happening in the greater kind of realm of education. And CAMI is very much connected to Department of Education and kind of those trends there.
Yeah, the reason I ask is we had a clear survey, which is the ACGME's Joint Commission equivalent every 3 year, and they were very interested in the Baylor residency program and
Okay.
how it integrated with their overall program,
Right.
because they saw that as a GME residency
Okay.
as well.
Interesting.
So I was just looking at it, I have no dang idea.
Right,
I
right,
don't even understand half what they're saying. So
right. We'll be happy to go in communication. So if you can put us in touch with them, happy to have a conversation with them. Yep. Any other questions or comments? I'm going to be here all day, so if there are any questions that you might have specifically for me, we have our faculty that know our program inside inside and out. And so please feel free throughout the day to ask any questions that may come up. So again, thank you very much again for being here and really for supporting our program and our students. Okay, thank you. So I think we're going to